Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this pre-recorded interview for the Southeast Asia Regional Session. I am Birger Stamperdahl, the president of Give to Asia, a public charity in San Francisco that supports advised grant making to local organizations across Asia. And I am grateful today to be sitting here virtually with Dr. Edi Rahmat, the executive director of Yayasan Project Hope in Indonesia. He's based in Jakarta. In an article during the first week of August, CNN described Indonesia as now being at the epicenter of the world's COVID pandemic. It is the world's fourth most populated country, and just in the past month, 1.2 million new COVID cases have been reported in Indonesia. Dr. Rahmat is a medical doctor and an epidemiologist. He has extensive experience in health sector programming and in managing humanitarian assistance to natural and man-made disasters. Dr. Rahmat has worked on behalf of major development partners like the World Bank, the European Union, USAID, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and others. He is now the executive director of Yayasan Project Hope in Indonesia, which is a not-for-profit foundation that is the extension of the International Project Hope NGO. I'll also note that Yayasan Project Hope is a grant recipient of Give to Asia, and most recently has received support of COVID-19 programming in the past 14 to 16 months. So thank you, Dr. Rahmat, for joining us and for joining me for this interview. So to give some people background on Project Hope, could you just please share a little bit about the organization's mission?
Yeah, we envision a world where everyone has access to the health that they need to reach full potential of their life through a strong and resilient global community of healthcare workers. Our mission is to put the power at the end of local health workers to save lives across the globe.
Great. So given where Indonesia is right now, sort of placed within the COVID pandemic, and also there are quite a number of other Southeast Asian countries that are significantly impacted right now, and we're at the second half of the second year of this pandemic. How are nonprofits in Indonesia sort of changing the way they operate during COVID to continue meeting what the needs are in their communities?
Yeah, I think we understand that the situation is not normal. Yeah, everybody was not prepared for a pandemic. Yeah, some of our field officers also get infected. In particular, those that working inside the government facility, for example, and they have to be in self-isolation. They have to be working at home, and travel restriction actually limit our capacity to reach the beneficiary directly. Our training or event has been changed to a virtual event where we have to maintain the quality and expected outcome of the target audience. So demand to care is increasing, but we have to apply a new way of working that should follow the health protocol.
Yeah. So I think I was planning on asking you some questions about the work of your organization specifically as sort of a case study of what's happening in Indonesia, and then asking you some broader questions about how you see the nonprofit sector generally in Indonesia that might extend to the situation in other countries. So I guess to look specifically at Project Hope, first of all, where does Project Hope get its funding, and how much of its funding right now is overseas funding?
Yeah, we actually raising fund locally in Indonesia, in particular during emergency response, like assistance for victim of earthquake and tsunami in Central Sulawesi region. But 80% of all funding for health sector programming for development actually comes from overseas donors.
Mm-hmm. And this is a question we didn't talk about before, but I'm just curious, has the funding changed during the pandemic? Have you seen increased percentage of international or domestic giving because of COVID?
That's a good question. Yeah, I know that the priority of donors changed. It has been difficult actually getting overseas funding at that time. Yeah, but we received the local funding for example, for procure and distributing personal protective equipment, for example. Yeah,
right.
But we are happy. We were very happy that our donor gave us some flexibility. For example, yeah. Example on saving life at birth program, for example, our donor gave us flexibility to refocus the activity and use some of the budget for procuring and distributing personal protective equipment, for example, and also use the money for implementing infection prevention control program so that we can actually prevent transmission to mother, to baby, and also to the healthcare workers. Yeah, but in particular from Give to Asia saving life of healthcare worker, actually our application was approved so that we can actually responding rapidly to the need of protecting healthcare worker from transmission from the COVID-19.
Okay, great. And maybe we can talk about that again a little bit more as a later on. I'd also like to hear maybe before the pandemic, you were obviously doing a lot of work in the health sector. Could you share a little bit about what that looked like before you needed to shift to COVID response?
Yes, actually we were active to provide humanitarian assistance for the victim of conflict, for the victim of earthquake, I mean, not conflict. We also provide direct consultation to more than 30,000 outpatient visit and distributed family kit to the victim of the disaster. We also responding to the Yogyakarta mountain eruption and working with local CSO to provide emergency assistance, for example. But we also implementing Give to Asia saving life at birth phase 1 and phase 2 that has helped hundreds of local government officials from the 3 districts with the capacity to have evidence-based planning and budgeting for maternal and children care, for example. We train more than 3,000 healthcare workers like midwife, medical doctor at primary care, OBGYN specialists to provide quality emergency maternal and neonatal care. Yeah, we also supported the 3 districts to mobilize community together to observe mother from pregnancy to delivery, ensuring that mother get the right care they need, for example, for transporting them to higher level of facility when they need to get emergency care or prepare blood transfusion, etc. We are also working on multi-drug resistant and other things.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So when the pandemic started, first of all, how did it affect your team? How is your staff and organization affected directly by the pandemic?
Yeah, you know that everybody was not prepared for a pandemic. Yeah, including us. Some of our field officers that working in government building also contracted by the virus, while also other health workers also infected by the virus that they share the room with them. They have to be in self-quarantine, working from home, and the government travel restriction also limit us to outreach to our beneficiary. And we have to change our modality from direct to direct meeting, for example, into virtual meeting for conducting training, etc. But we have to maintain quality and expected impact to the target audience. So we understand that the demand for care are even increasing during pandemic, but we have to apply new way of working according to the government health protocol.
Mm-hmm. And so, how did you decide what projects or how to prioritize the needs during the pandemic, to sort of match your organization's skills or I guess access to have an impact?
Yeah, actually, we struck with the number and percentage of healthcare workers that contracted the virus. Some of them died by the virus, like for example, yeah. Up to now, more than 1,500 healthcare workers died because of the virus. Yeah. We also learned that pregnant women and children also infected, and we suspect that the COVID-19 transmission may happen within the health facility. So meaning that we have to protect healthcare workers, but also we have to protect mother, children from getting infected by the virus. So we change our approach that we need to identify what actually the need at the facility, and we understand that most of the health facility have insufficient personal protective equipment, for example. And our baseline assessment so that the healthcare worker knowledge and practice on the correct use of personal protective equipment, for example, is very low. The practice on donning, doping PPE is low at 55%, and the hand hygiene practice also less than 60% score, for example. With this, we also need to help the local government, for example, to protect both healthcare worker and the clients.
You mentioned one of the projects that we were involved with, which was called Train the Trainers, and that was a project that helped to train healthcare professionals to keep themselves and their communities protected during the pandemic. Dr. Rahmat, could you talk a little bit about the impact of that project and how many healthcare workers you reached, etc.?
Yeah, we apply a cascade approach for delivering messages to our target beneficiary. At the national level, we train about 115 master trainer, for example, on infection prevention control program. And through a combination of on-site and virtual training, through doctor-to-doctor online webinar, actually we can expand to reach about 39,000 of health worker with basic knowledge on infection prevention control. Yeah, that's actually we can reach more healthcare worker through the trainers projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you maybe give us a sense of what the cost of that project was to deliver, and how many dollars did it cost for each healthcare worker that you were training, just to give a sense of the kind of impact donors can have with a project like that in Southeast Asia?
Actually, we implement $150,000 grant for saving healthcare worker, and we can reach actually 39,000 healthcare worker with basic infection prevention control knowledge, meaning that okay, 9,000, meaning that for for $4.5 actually, we can have one healthcare worker receiving basic infection prevention control knowledge.
Great. Okay.
And from other projects, for example, we also learn, for example, from saving life at birth grant, for example. If we invest $3, actually, we could make a pregnant woman screened or tested for COVID-19.
Well, we know that the US dollar can go a long way and have a big impact in Southeast Asia for projects like these. And it sort of gets us, I think, talking about your perspective more on the nonprofit sector in general in Southeast Asia and in Indonesia. And so for a donor who is interested in making maybe the biggest impact they could make in Indonesia right now, where do you suggest, they start looking, or what are the biggest funding needs just generally in Indonesia that you see right now?
Yeah, we learned that from a statistic, the COVID-19 second wave, so declining number of people getting infected and die because of the COVID-19, but the second wave is not over. We learned that the outbreak actually moving from the urban to peripheral location, to the peripheral district, to outside Java Island, for example. I think this is a situation that the district that far from the urban area will face harder to get oxygen supply, for example. So I think it is necessary to build the resiliency of the health system in those poor districts, because you know that usually they are low spender in health, and the capacity of health worker also poorer than in urban area, and we can understand that the provision of oxygen concentrator, for example, could make a difference to make the hospital at the poor district to be self-sufficiency to provide oxygen when demanded by the patient that need oxygen supplies. Yeah. In addition to that, we learned that more and more pregnant women and newborn are contracted and infected by the virus and even died because of the virus. And some of them have no access to emergency room at hospital, for example, when hospitals are overwhelmed with the COVID-19 patient. So I think provision of COVID-19 screening to pregnant women, supplying with personal protective equipment, or help the health facility to be more ready when mother and baby in need of emergency also is necessary. Yeah, and learning from our previous project, actually, we need to expand our infection prevention control training to those rural districts and eastern Indonesian regions. We also need to build the capacity of health system, the hospital, to monitor or also to reduce healthcare associated infection that include the transmission of COVID-19 within the healthcare facility. And at later stage, for example, we need to also increase the capacity to deal with antimicrobial resistance because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. Yeah, learning that there are a lot of healthcare workers feeling stressful because of the COVID-19 pandemic. They may have a depressed situation because they don't know actually that they have to treat undiagnosed person, for example. We will continue investing in mental health program that also a big need currently.
And so for a donor who's evaluating different nonprofits, in the work that they do in Indonesia, we know that there's a fairly healthy nonprofit sector in Indonesia, as there is in quite a number of Southeast Asian countries. Do you have any advice on how they should sort of evaluate or what they should look for when they're considering a nonprofit to work with?
Yeah, from the quantity perspective, donor need to monitor how many workers, how many pregnant women, how many facility are reached and supported by the invested grant. Yeah. But also we need to monitor the quality of the program. For example, what is the quality of the outcome? For example, we need to measure the improved practice on hand hygiene, for example, after the healthcare worker receiving infection prevention control training, for example. Also, when we donate machine, for example, oxygen concentrator, we need to also rate how many people serve and utilize the donated machine, and how many lives can be saved by donating oxygen concentrator in a hospital. This is not easy measurement, but we need to monitor this. And the third, I think we need also to measure the sustainability of the activity. In our program, for example, we try hard to insert our program into the system since the launch of the program. We need to build the connection of the infection prevention control program within the existing hospital accreditation system so that they can sustain after the project finishes.
Great. Well, thank you, Dr. Ahmad. I think maybe one last question here, which is maybe ends on a fundraising note for you. But what are initiatives are Project Hope, currently raising funds for? And what are the additional sort of projects or that you have planned for the rest of this year?
At the moment, we are raising donation for oxygen concentrator. We plan to distribute to hundreds of hospitals in periphery area that hardly hit by the pandemic to build the resiliency when they have to treat a patient with COVID-19 and needing oxygen supply, for example. In addition, also we would like to expand our reach of saving life of healthcare worker. We want to expand our infection prevention control program to additional hundreds of hospitals in rural district with the potential for distributing also personal protective equipment. And we would also continue to insert mental health program inside the hospital team so that the program, the mental health program, could sustain within the supported hospital. And struck by increasing number of maternal and neonatal death directly or indirectly impacted by the COVID-19, we need to combine the infection prevention and control program within our existing saving life at birth activity. That's our current
activity
plan.
Well, thank you, Dr. Ahmad, for the discussion today. I think it's really helpful for donors to just hear the perspectives and activities of people and groups that are doing the work, in the country and in Southeast Asia right now that's being so impacted by the pandemic. So I greatly appreciate you taking this time to, step away from your work and speak with me. And best of luck to you and Yayasan Project Hope.
Thank you very much for giving opportunity to talk with you, to be interviewed, and to raise the awareness of the current situation in Southeast Asia and in particular in Indonesia situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.